at you, they'll look at you weird, like, what's that person doing? Are they doing, like yoga in the middle of nowhere? Right? You have that joke where some guys were praying at the gym inside the classroom area, where they do the aerobic classes and stuff. And after they finish, they look behind them and people were following them thinking it was a yoga class. Right? But sometimes we think, like, is this person looking at me weird? Are they judging me for praying? Can I pray here? Is it going to be weird? Do I look weird? Am I going to be judged for having, trying to follow the sunnah and having a long beard and, covering my head with something? Certain things like that. And it's especially more difficult for our sisters because when they put on the hijab, they're so much more visibly Muslim than men are. Because nowadays, it's pretty fashionable to have a beard. Right? It's not something weird anymore where everybody's clean shaven. But for our sisters, they wear hijab. It's much more likely that somebody will say something to them because some coward of a guy might feel like, oh, he's something big because he goes and says something mean to a hijabi sister. Right? It's cowardice, right? And a lot of times we also feel afraid, especially nowadays, we feel afraid to speak up for justice because we don't know what's going to happen, right? It's even gotten to a point where even our civil liberties might be compromised because there are some people who have power that don't want to uphold our constitutional rights. So we feel afraid. But the Prophet ﷺ told us that the greatest struggle, the greatest form of jihad, right? He didn't mention anything having to do with fighting, nothing to do with fighting. He said the greatest form of jihad is to speak a word of truth in front of a tyrant, right? In front of an oppressive leader. So we can't be afraid to be Muslim and to speak up for justice. You don't even have to be Muslim to speak up for justice. But we as Muslims, this is part of our religion. This is part of being Muslim. That you say a good word, that you stand up for justice, that you promote peace, that you spread peace. Prophet ﷺ said multiple times, Afshu salam. That means, literally it means to spread peace everywhere. It also means that when you see one another, you say salam to each other. And this also promotes peace. Right? It feels good to be able to go up to your fellow Muslim and just say salam to them. Right? Everybody around you saying salam. It's a good feeling. And this is what it means to be a Muslim, no matter where you live. And we can't just try to fall in line with how others want us to be. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in tuti'u alladhina kafaru yaruddukum ala a'qabikum fatanqalibu khasirin. That, oh, you who believe, if you obey those who disbelieve, they will turn you back upon your heels and you will then become losers. Right? Nobody wants the Muslims to follow them and obey them because they feel like, oh, this is going to be great. Right? Most of the people out there, they just want the Muslims to be defeated and humiliated and to just not even be Muslim, right? Because Islam is the most perfect, holistic religion that dictates pretty much every aspect of our lives. And modern day society does not want religion to be this communal, societal thing where you have all these laws and you have to follow this and you have to follow that. They just want it to be personal, right? What is it that you feel on the inside? It's about your inner spirituality. Go and attend the mosque maybe once a week and get your little iman boost, and just for the rest of the time, don't worry about religion. Don't worry about standards of modesty in the religion. Don't worry about halal and haram. Don't worry about, like this and that. Just go be a regular member of American society, and then on your Fridays you can go and listen to the khutbah, the Friday khutbah, and you can maybe, feel spiritually uplifted for a few minutes and then go back to your daily lives. Right? Shaitan wants us to hold this life dearly. that we give our all for this life and to forget our ultimate objective, which is the akhirah. Right? We live in this life, right? We give priority in this life, that whatever we do in this life is allowing us to progress in the afterlife, to get us closer to Jannah and further away from the hellfire. And Shaitan has made it his life goal to make us do the opposite. Right? He told Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm going to take down as many of them as I can. Illa ibadika. What does he say? Illa ibadika al-mukhlasin. Except your sincere worshippers. Right? Except your sincere worshippers. So the ones that center their lives around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Shaitan won't be able to lead us astray. But once he gets us, he finds that crack to where he can enter and make us cling onto this life and everything this life has to offer, which is nothing in comparison to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala offers us in the akhirah. But once he finds that crack and he slips in and he's like, and he tells us that, okay, look, don't pray here because, people are going to look at you weird. Don't grow your beard because then nobody's going to hire you for the job. Don't wear hijab because, you may have a bad experience and people may say things about you and maybe you won't get promoted. All of these things, right? And it's a matter of fact. These things do happen, right? My wife used to work for this, it's called Creative Consumer Research, right? It's one of those like survey companies. And this was a long time ago. It's one of her first jobs, right? When she was a lot younger. And sometimes you had to do face-to-face surveys. You had to meet with clients or you had to meet with the company to see what kind of surveys they want and stuff like that. And she knew, and I don't know how much she'll appreciate me telling the story or not, but like she knew she was much better than a lot of the other people at her job, right? She would bring in some, like, she had good numbers, she would get a lot of surveys, she would bring in a lot of people, all that stuff. But when it came to face-to-face client stuff, right, they would choose somebody else just because they didn't want somebody wearing hijab to speak face-to-face with the clients. And she knew that, right? She didn't stay there very long, but she knew that. And so it's a reality, these things happen. People may see that, you dress a certain way, you look a certain way, and they're not going to promote you or they're not going to give you opportunity, right? But everything's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we do things sincerely for His sake, then when one door closes, He'll open another door for us, right? So quickly to move on. So how do we remain steadfast while engaging society? Because again, we should be striving as Muslims to uplift ourselves, uplift each other, right? Have, support Muslim businesses, support Muslim initiatives, make it so that if you work for a company and they're hiring, then you try to bring in other Muslims. We need to help each other. This is what other minorities do, right? We in this country, we're a minority. Do you all know how much of the population Muslims make up in America? Nope, it's less. It's less than 1%. Maybe in Houston, but we make up all of America. We make up less than 1%. Right? There's over 300 million Americans, like people in America. Over 350. Yeah, we're not even 1%, so we don't even make up like 3.5 million. Right? Maybe. It's possible that there's more, but I mean, they don't really update the census every year either, right? So maybe it's increased. Maybe the Muslims are now over 1% instead of less than 1%. But I think as recent as 2011, right? That is a long time ago, right? But at that time, it was less than 1%. It's still a small number. Let's say it is 3%. 3%. That's what it says officially. 1.34%. Okay, just for the sake of just for argument's sake, let's say it's even 2%. We'll find a middle ground. Let's say it's 2%. That gives you 6-7 million Muslims. We're still a minority. If there's over 350 million Americans and we're only 6 million and we're concentrated in a few cities, right? Parts of Michigan, parts of California, parts of the Northeast coast, right? Texas, Chicago. These are where you have large concentrations of Muslims, right? Let's say that does not cover most of America. You still have, I think there was this was a Pew study, right? They said that over 50% of Americans have never met a Muslim before, right? Never met a Muslim before. And majority of Americans, if you believe Fox News, it's their slogan, that majority of Americans get their news from Fox News. And whether it's Fox or CNN or even other like CBS, MSNBC, they don't necessarily portray Islam in a good light. So again, society has this negative outlook on Islam, this negative view of Islam. But we still have to engage with society. We try to make our own. We have our little bubbles, our little communities, but we still have to engage with the broader society. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes the importance of clinging onto the religion when He says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبَلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, that hold firmly to the rope of Allah together and do not become divided. So if we want to face society, we have to be united as Muslims. So it starts with us uniting together, us being together, us being one body, truly one body. And then we can have the confidence to face society. Right? You have examples from the seerah, from the companions. You have people like Salman al-Farisi radiallahu anh, who gave up his life, who was abandoned by his family. Not even abandoned, he was chained up by his father because he was searching for the truth. Then he was sold into slavery, all because he was searching for the truth. Right? And then eventually he became a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. He became so beloved by the Prophet ﷺ that Nabi ﷺ said that Salman is from my family. Right? This became his status because he was someone who truly wanted to find the truth and he wanted to hold on to it as best as he could. Right? So then the next part are, what are some areas in life that we may feel isolated in society? We may feel like we're this other person, that we don't fit in, or we may try too hard to fit in. And that's when we start to compromise on our values. That's when we start to do things that we shouldn't be doing as Muslims. Right? Especially for the youth, it starts at school. It can be grade school, it can be middle school, high school, university. Right? Maybe you could go to Islamic school your whole life. Maybe you could go to, mashallah, in Houston you have so many Islamic schools now. Right? Before it just used to be like 2 or 3. Now you have like Islamic schools in every other part of Houston. Right? North Houston, it used to only be Darul Arqam. Now you have Houston Peace Academy. Now you have HQA North. Right? Not too far from here you have other schools. You have there's a few HQAs, there's a few HPAs, there's a few DUAs. There's a lot of schools now, mashallah. You could go to Islamic school your whole life, and then maybe when you get to university, you may feel the need to compromise a little bit. How do I fit in now? I'm no longer in my bubble. I need to fit in, or something like that. Or then you start working, and then you start to feel the pressure of needing to be a certain way. And we'll get to that. But we do face challenges. We face challenges in classrooms. SubhanAllah, I'm sure y'all have heard recently, Paul Revere Middle School, the 2 Afghani girls that were attacked because they were Afghan and they wore hijab. 2 or 3, it was a few of them, but it was a lot of students ganging up on them. Right? They say about 20 students started beating them, stabbing them with pens and pencils, to the point where they became unresponsive. Right? And it really, just hearing it in general hits hard, but the fact that that middle school is like close to where I live, it hit a little bit more too, because it's like, subhanAllah, when it happens close to home, you start to think like, could I have done something about it? Or like, what can I do? And of course, first we have to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We turn to Him no matter what. Primary thing we should always do is to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then we have to advocate. We have to, reach out. What is HISD doing? CARE is working very hard on this case, but there needs to be some type of pressure. And initially, HISD didn't say anything, but now they're starting to make comments and starting to put out statements that, we're going to transfer the girl somewhere else so she feels safe, whatever. And, but it shouldn't stop there, right? There should be consequences. We can't let these things happen to us, right? But in classrooms, our beliefs may be dismissed or misunderstood. Even at a higher level, the teachers may dismiss things about Islam, right? They may say things that are inaccurate or not true, whether it's science or history or social studies, right? And then I just mentioned the bullying. You have microaggressions related to faith or to clothing choice, right? There's a struggle of balancing school commitments. People tend to think like, oh, I have a test coming up. And this is honestly like, it sounds almost comical, but this is a reality. Some people will say that I have this test coming up during Ramadan. Can I not fast? Right? Do I have permission to not fast? That's like, subhanAllah, no matter what you do, you cannot fast, eat and drink. You can take, all the caffeine and ADHD medication, whatever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could make it so that day you don't learn jack squat, right? Our success, everything is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's say you struggle a bit and you strive for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you fast and you study for your test, and He makes everything process in your brain and download, like at light speed. Whereas you could, let's say you become weak-willed and you decide, I'm not going to fast today, I got this exam coming up, and then you're just struggling to study all day. Right? We should turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these cases, not think that, I'm going to try and take the easy way out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who can make it easy for us. And this is more for the adults, we need more representation when it comes to, faculty, staff, student organizations, PTO, stuff like that, right? Or we just focus all our support and resources to Islamic schools, to make it accessible, to make it affordable, to make it so that parents don't even really need to think twice. Do I send my kid to public school, or can I just send them to Islamic school where they'll be in an Islamic environment and they'll get an education and they'll build confidence being Muslim, right? We have to give more of a emphasis and priority to Islamic schools. Then we don't have to worry about lack of representation, right? So we need to make sure that we start to come together as a society, that we make sure that we are not placing our priorities on things from the dunya. You have so many wealthy Muslims that will rather send their kids to this British international school or to this Catholic school, and then you have the Islamic schools that are struggling to get funding and whatnot. Right? This is honestly a misuse of the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us. But some practical advice for students is that be confident in your identity, right? We don't need to change who we are. We don't need to be accepted. The Prophet ﷺ told us that we're going to be strangers. So just find other strangers and just vibe with them, right? You don't need to try and fit in. Fitting in with the normies, right? It's not going to benefit you at all. Right? Because one day something might be normal, the next day it's outdated or something else is the new norm. Right? But Islam is eternal. Right? You can have your likes, you can be into, K-dramas and anime and sports and all these other things, and it's all fine. Right? There's nothing wrong with it, and you can bond with other people over it. But once it comes to our morals, our ethics, our beliefs, and standing up for truth and justice, and standing on the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that never takes a backseat. There's no bending or crossing the line in those situations, right? And seek out Muslim groups. There's MSAs at almost every school, right? If you go to Islamic school, that's one big MSA, right? And find like-minded friends, find other Muslims, be each other's support, right? Advocate to your school. Tell them we need places for prayer. We need accommodations for fasting. They have to respect it, right? It's part of our rights. And we have to remind ourselves that this is not a sign of weakness. Even if somebody might make fun of you or say something, make some type of comment, that's just weakness and cowardice in those people, not in us. And then the other ones, really we don't, workplace and professional settings. For the youth, if you do have a job and you feel like something is not right because maybe you ask for a prayer break, or maybe you wear hijab, or maybe there's certain dietary restrictions, then again, we have groups, we have things like CARE and whatnot that will fight for our rights, right? We have to be able to demand our rights, because we as Muslims a lot of times, like as the sister mentioned, we feel like we're too different, so we don't want to speak up. We don't want to go against the grain. We don't want to make trouble for anybody, right? But that's what we have to do. That's how all these other minorities get their rights taken care of. They say that, hey, we have certain religious rights that need to be respected. We can't be like, Dhuhr time's almost over, but I'll just pray when I get home. We can't compromise. We can't compromise on these things. If it's time to pray, we tell them, okay, I need a break at this time. Come up with some type of compromise with work. Say that I need to pray at Dhuhr time and it's at this time, or I need to pray at Asr time, it's at this time. So maybe I will take 5 minutes less for lunch. Right? I'll come in 5 minutes earlier from lunch. That way I just need 5 minutes to go and pray Asr. Right? You can always work something out. And if they don't respect that, then either you get them to respect it, or we have to do our best to find an environment, a workplace in which we can practice our religion. But then when it comes to professional settings, and this is something that the youth need to understand, that it will happen that if you go into certain workplace and professional settings, that there will be times and environments where you might be expected to compromise on your values, right? You have mixers and events and happy hour and parties at work and all these other things where we cannot feel shy to excuse ourselves from them, right? And like you have male-female interaction where it may seem disrespectful to not shake the hand of a manager or your boss, right? To not go to a party where there's going to be alcohol and mixing, to not go to happy hour with your coworkers. They're gonna be like, this person never wants to hang out with the coworkers, so they're always, they're so antisocial. But that's not the case. It's just not an environment that we need to be in, right? Or maybe your boss or manager wants to have an informal meeting where you may be in a situation where a man may be alone with a woman and vice versa. We have to let them know that, look, can we be in a room with the door open, or with windows, or with another employee present, right? We can't compromise on these things. And it may feel like that, we're excluding ourselves, and they may feel like that we're just being, hard to work with and antisocial, and it's bad for the work environment and whatnot. And it leads to potential bias and discrimination, where then again, I mentioned this earlier, we may not get that promotion, we may not get hired for that job. And there may be ethical challenges, right? There are people, subhanAllah. I still, honestly, it truly disgusts me that there are Muslims out there that work for companies like Halliburton and Lockheed Martin. And like, these are companies that promoted war in Muslim lands and the killing of Muslims, and provide weapons, literally weapons, for that are being used to kill Muslims around the world. And you have people that work there. But it's like, why? Yeah, he's the president of that sector that deals with the AI, and he himself is Muslim. Well, okay, yeah. And like we have to look at ourselves. Like, what are we doing? Is what I'm doing or the company that I work for, like, ask any scholar, is it okay to work for Lockheed Martin that develops weapons? They'll tell you no, it's haram. It's just as haram as working for Budweiser or working for DraftKings. If y'all don't know what that is, it's a sports betting company. Working for a casino, even working for a bank. People don't realize that, but that's usually something that it's not as obvious. I'm trying to say the obvious ones. These other places, like working for Lockheed Martin or working directly for a bank, right? Yeah, working at a gas station, but it's just as haram, right? Because these people are actively harming Muslims, right? So we have to think about ourselves, like, okay, maybe a situation happens where your company starts to do these things and you're actively looking for another job, but then you can go to some of these people's LinkedIn profiles. They've been working for these companies for over a decade or half a dozen years. And it's like, what are you doing? We have to really think about these things, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one who provides our sustenance. It will come to us, and we have to go and earn it. But are we going to earn it in a haram way that we will be asked about it? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell us that I wrote this sustenance for you, but you went out and earned it in an immoral, unethical, haram manner. What do you have to say for yourself? Maybe they might say like, oh, I was working this job for a long time. I was getting promotions, getting paid more. But I was serving the Muslim community and I was doing this and that. But yes. Mhm. Mhm. Yes. Yeah, that's why the enemies, the Prophet ﷺ said that our enemies will overtake us because we have a love for this dunya. Because we prefer this dunya over what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised us in the akhirah. Right? And we love wealth and we love, these things, and you know yeah, we're afraid of death. So not to say, like, unfortunately people will try to twist these things around to say that, oh, Muslims just they don't care for life and they'll just blow themselves up for the sake of whatnot. But even that's a whole nother topic, because people will make it sound like a conspiracy theory, but it's not even the Muslims that started doing those things, and even when we hear about it, it's probably not even Muslims doing it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So we have to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it comes to work, we have to trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide for us, but we have to do what is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot compromise on our morals, our ethics, our values, and we have to continue. If you're struggling and you really need a job, and the only job you get is something halal in and of itself, maybe you do cybersecurity, but it's for a bank, right? You're not dealing with any riba. Maybe you're just dealing with hiding people's information from other people so that it doesn't get stolen, right? It's a very real situation. And I know people that actually have gone through this situation, right? Most scholars will say that, okay, if this is the only thing you're able to get, And if you don't, then you'll be going into debt and you'll be, struggling. Then take that job, because the job itself is halal, but maybe it's for like a haram entity, right? Take that job, but actively seek out another job, which is not, you can keep looking. But then if you get complacent and comfortable and be like, no, this is good, I think I'll keep doing this. And you'll be like, it's okay, Allah understands, He'll forgive me. No, that's being very insincere. It's being very insincere, right? Okay, moving on. We have other areas which are very important to every single person, and that's social life and friendships. Right? We have to navigate peer pressure in friendships and social gatherings. If all our friends are going somewhere where it's not exactly a good environment, it's not halal, maybe there's something bad going on, free mixing, smoking, all this other stuff, then we have to be able to be like, I don't do that stuff, so I'm not gonna go. I don't recommend that y'all go either, but I'm not gonna go, right? Because it's not like you can't just be like, you do you, I'm just gonna chill at home. We also have to be part of promoting guidance to others, because if we want to be guided, we have, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to try our best to help guide others. That doesn't mean you give this I'm better than you attitude, or I'm holier than thou vibe. You just be sincere and be like, hey, it doesn't sit well with me. There's a lot of haram going on. I don't think it's the best environment for us, right? We can go have fun, go do something else, but this is just, my advice, and you can leave it at that. And if they still go, then, if it's family, then of course we have to keep ties of kinship. If it's friends, if we want to be a real friend, then we have to keep reminding them of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to avoid certain activities, drinking, partying, dating, all these things, right? Even at school events. And I mentioned office parties and casual hangouts with friends. If Islamic values aren't prioritized, we have to, at the very least, we remove ourselves from it, and then to make it something beneficial for both us and others, we try to remind them very gently, with a lot of wisdom, with a lot of care, that, hey, this isn't the best thing for us, especially if your group is all Muslims, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, and maybe you hear this a lot, because a lot of adults and elders will say this to youth all the time. Al-mar'u ala dini khalili, falyanzur ahadukum man yukhalilu. Right, and this is narrated in Abu Dawood and Tirmidhi. A person is upon the religion of their khalil. What is a khalil? Friend? What kind of friend? Just like, hey, what's up? How you been? How you living? Close friend? It can be a close friend. What's a better translation of a khalil? This is like that dear friend that you're concerned about, you're always thinking about, that you're, like they're your ride or die, right? That's what a khalil is, right? Like, it's not just, it can't just be like, oh, I just kind of know these people, hang out with them sometimes. It's like, who is your close, your inner circle? Right? Who is your posse? Who are your people? Right? Who's your fam? You have to look at those people, because those are the people that are going to influence you the most, right? They're going to be the greatest influence upon you outside of your household. Right, so we have to find righteous companions. We have to find those khalils that will make us better people, better Muslims. Right, build connections to those places where you might find those people. Right, Muslim student groups, community events, the masjid. Right, don't try to look for friends. it's kind of, whether it's friends or a spouse, right? Imagine if you're Muslim and somebody asks you, like, where did you meet your wife? Where did you meet your husband? Oh, I met them at the hookah bar. I met them at the club. I met them at Suhoor Fest. Right? Is that the best place to find friends, spouses? No. Right? But then if somebody asks, oh, where did you meet your spouse? Or how did you meet? If you ask friends, how did you meet? Oh, we met at the masjid. Right? Oh, I saw her volunteering. Right? If it's a guy, if you ask how did you meet your wife, I saw her volunteering at this event or this charity thing or this thing, this or that. Right? Oh, we attended this lecture, huh? Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, in case, like, you meet, but even then, if you say you met someone on a Muslim matchmaking site instead of, like, Tinder, Bumble, whatever these other ones are, OK Cupid, like, then you know that at least they're sincere and they're trying to do it the right way, right? Instead of, like, again, like, we met on this, right? Some other one. So we have to seek righteous companionship, because even if we have just one close Muslim friend that is a good, practicing, righteous Muslim, it can do wonders for us, for our own deen, for our own iman. Right? And then again, maybe in politics and civic engagement, we may find ourselves isolated, participating in politics, feeling underrepresented, sorry, I knew I was missing a few letters in there. Whether it's leadership roles, mainstream political discourse, facing Islamophobia, which a lot of people are now. We mentioned Paul Revere Middle School. Right? We want to make sure that we feel comfortable too, but we're new here, right? We haven't been here for centuries. We've been here maybe for a few decades, right? Maybe 1 century max, right? Maybe a little bit more. At least as a proper part of society, right? Maybe some Muslims came, discovered America, and went back. Allahu Alam. But we have not been here that long, so somebody has to tread that path. They have to lay the foundation. The same way, our parents, our ancestors, however recent, maybe grandparents, came here, laid the foundation for us to succeed and flourish, right? And it could be both dunya and in deen, right? In the worldly life and in our religion, right? This masjid didn't just fall from the sky, right? Our forefathers, however recent, right? Our parents, our grandparents, they came and built this place up brick by brick, right? They laid those foundations. So we have to lay those foundations for future generations to be able to participate more freely and feel more comfortable. But somebody has to struggle and even suffer in order for future generations to flourish. So even in political and civic spaces, somebody has to trailblaze in those areas. They have to be active. They have to be run for office to try and make a change. And of course, you can talk about all the Islamophobia and APAC and all that stuff where they're actively trying to fight against pro-Palestinian, pro-Muslim advocates, right? But we still have to make it known that, hey, this Muslim or this person is fighting to represent our interests, so we have to support them. Not think that I'm just going to choose the lesser of two evils. No, because even our vote, whether it's 1%, 2%, 3%, it makes a big deal to those who are running. It makes a big deal to them. They care. Majority of the American population will be like, y'all are just 1%. Who cares about your vote? Those candidates care. It makes a difference in heavily populated Muslim areas like in Dearborn. It can make a difference in certain counties in Houston and in Chicago and in, other parts in maybe even in New York, right? It can make a difference. So we can't be afraid to step on those paths either, right? So we need to stay informed. We need to stay engaged with these issues. Who's running? Who's doing what? What Muslim organizations are out there? What Muslim political action committees are out there that are trying to champion our cause and fight for our interests, right? And the leaders in those areas. And remember that even if we feel choked up and our voice shakes, that whatever little we say, if it's the truth and it's what's right, then this weighs way more in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than us being silent and just sitting in our homes, right? Maybe we have that nice, nice house that we just sit in and we just watch the news and we just do our armchair politics, and we're not even watching local news. We're watching news from our country back home, right? How many times have you seen uncles just sitting on their couches and watching, news about India and Pakistan or news about the Middle East from their country, and they have no clue what's going on in the land that they came to most likely by their own choice, right? And then the last one that I want to go over, so that we can stay on time, inshallah, is that, and this is something that affects, actually I had another one, but it affects the youth a lot more than it affects the older generation. And this is media and pop culture, right? There is an overwhelming presence of un-Islamic narratives, anti-Islamic narratives in movies, TV, music, and especially social media, because we consume social media more than anything else. We're probably on our phones, doom scrolling more than we're watching TV or watching a movie or listening to music, which again, I'm not going to say music's haram, but whatever is out there isn't exactly, beneficial to anybody. Right? You just listen to the lyric of one song and it's full of either drugs or zina or, just a lot of un-Islamic things. And there's a lot of the Muslim it's not even representation, but the portrayal of Muslims in the media, whether it's the news, whether it's movies or TV shows, they stereotype all of these Islamophobic tropes that Muslims are terrorists, Muslims are backwards, Muslims are misogynistic, Muslims are, they're just, all they care about is things that go against, any sensible, good person, which is not true. And then you look at a movie and they're glorifying, going to war and fighting against the terrorists and saving this person. Or if you look at a show that's about a Muslim, and it may be someone that, let's say it's a show about a hijabi sister, somebody made like a funny video about it, where every Netflix show about a hijabi is that she's so oppressed and she's being oppressed by her family and her religion, and she becomes free when she takes off her hijab, or she runs away from home, or she goes and runs off and marries that non-Muslim guy that's in love with her, or something like that, right? And this is honestly, it's just meant to destroy what non-Muslims think about Muslims and their ability to respect our beliefs and our values, and also Muslims themselves, because maybe they find themselves in that situation and they don't have the confidence to think that, this is what I'm supposed to be doing by Allah. And that's when shaitan comes and messes with you and makes you think that, no, you're supposed to be free, right? Why are you following some outdated form of modesty, right? Look at all these other people. Look at how great they look, right? Look, and subhanAllah, it's become a disease where people are so concerned about maintaining their appearance that they start to change the way they look, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already told us that لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already created us in the best fashion. So why are people, both men and women, subhanAllah, you'd be surprised, both men and women are going out and getting plastic surgery, are going out and getting Botox, which is literally injecting poison, because those are neurotoxins that you're injecting into your nerves, going out and getting fillers, going out and getting this and that. For what? So you can feel good about your appearance? Like how much further is shaitan going to make us ungrateful, whether we think about it or not? Maybe we don't realize it, but this is really being ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He says that He created us in the best fashion, and yet we want to go out there and change our appearance. So we need to be aware that, it is difficult. We may find it difficult to find halal entertainment or even cultural, options to where we want to engage with our culture but maintain our Islamic values, because we live in an age where media shapes our thoughts, our desires, and even our morality. Right? But we have to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that if we follow these whims and desires that media and pop culture creates for us, then we're going to be led astray from the straight path. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَتَّبِعِ الْهَوَىٰ. Do not follow your desires, and more accurately, especially sinful desires, because it will lead you astray from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَيُضِلَّكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And one of the main things we have to be careful about, which I want each and every single one of us to remember, is that because of all of this exposure, because before we didn't have this much exposure, right? I'm a 90s kid. Okay, we did not have this type of exposure that our youth have today. Now it's in the palm of our hands. Everything, the entire world is at the palm of our hands. And this overexposure leads to desensitized mindsets, that we start to think that it's so normal and regular that whatever is straight up haram just seems normal. You see a person dressed inappropriately, you don't even think twice, right? You hear something inappropriate, normal. Our vocabulary, maybe something inappropriate, completely normal. We don't even think twice about it, right? We walk into certain places we're not supposed to go, completely normal, because it's just all over the place. We become desensitized to sin. So we have to check ourselves. We have to basically, people say that they go on these fasts from technology, social media, right? And it's meant to reset your mind, because it's unhealthy. Mentally, emotionally, psychologically, to consume this much is unhealthy, right? So we have to be very intentional that I'm doing this for something good, not to just waste my time, not to be heedless. We have to be careful with what we watch, what we listen to. Sometimes we wake up in the morning, and I'm guilty of this as well. First thing we do is we pull up our phone, and then we may see some notifications, and then we hop on, TikTok, Instagram, and then we just start scrolling. Right? For me, it's Instagram. I don't have TikTok. It happens. But we have to make sure that we have to think about how we consume these things. And we want to support Muslim initiatives, right? You have, instead of, Netflix, Hulu, all these other things. Hulu's owned by Disney, by the way, and Disney supports Zionism, all that stuff. So take that as you will, right? However you want. But we need to make sure that, you have things like Muslim Kids TV, you have Muslim documentaries, you have a lot of these things, right, that we can look into and we can support. Because if we don't support and prop ourselves up, then we're not going to have anything for ourselves, right? Even when it comes to media, even when it comes to content, it could be TV shows, it can be cartoons, it can be movies, documentaries. If we don't support it, Just like if we don't support Islamic schools, they're just going to die and wither away, and we're not going to be left with anything, right? And then I had one about family and extended relatives, which it is very important, but I just want to emphasize that our families are very important to us, especially our immediate families, our parents, our siblings, our children. They are very important. We cannot break off ties with them. We have to be wise with how we advise them, and we are allowed to not obey our parents if they're calling us to something haram or clearly against the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So we have to make sure that we do not choose obedience of the creation over obedience of the Creator. And we need to make sure that we keep the ties of kinship, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will support us as long as we stick to the truth. Right? So we can be kind to our family members if they are trying to, take us or put us in a situation that may go against our values as Muslims, right? Sometimes families can be on different Islamic wavelengths. They could be on different levels. Maybe you have parents that aren't so practicing, or children that don't end up being super practicing, but you want to continue, or siblings even, right? A lot of times it happens between siblings. You want to be firm, but you want to be respectful. And you want to be able to explain your choices, but you do it with wisdom. Don't say something like, I'm trying to be a good Muslim, you're on the path to hellfire. That's not very respectful, right? You don't want to tell your sibling or your parent that what you're doing is you're going to end up in the hellfire. You can say it in a manner where it's like, I'm very concerned for you, and try and teach them and explain to them. But again, it requires wisdom. We have to have patience. It takes time. Change takes time. I know converts that go and study Islam, become alims, become sheikhs, and they give da'wah to their parents for years, hoping that they're going to accept Islam. And it takes time. It does not happen overnight. But it does happen where it softens their hearts and opens up their hearts, and maybe they accept Islam. I've heard stories where converts' parents accept Islam on their deathbed. They take the shahada and they take their last breath. I've heard stories where someone gave da'wah to his father, who doesn't even live in this country. He lives in Central America, in Latin America, and gave da'wah to him for over 20 years. And finally he took his shahada. So we have these stories, but it takes patience. It takes sincerity. And we want to seek support from other righteous people. Right? If our family's not supporting us, then we want to have that support. And especially with converts, we have to support them. I've heard stories, for instance, like Imam Suhaib Webb told us a story once where there was a sister, she converted, and she called him saying that, is it okay if I hide the fact that I'm fasting and I eat dinner with my family, because they may kill me if they find out that I'm Muslim, right? It comes to that extent. And I believe it. It sounds extreme and over-exaggerated, but I believe that there are some situations like that. Or they'll disown me, or they'll kick me out of the house. And these could be teenagers, right? So we have to be that support for people who are seeking righteous companions and want to maintain their religion because they want to be on the straight path. And then we have to also make dua. Again, everything begins with dua, or with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we have to be able to raise our hands and turn towards Him. Right? So again, we need to be able to, and I'm going to conclude with this, we need to make sure that we know how to balance our religion with modern society, right? Our deen, our iman, our Islam, we do not compromise for anything. But yes, we can balance it. We look at examples like Muhammad Ali, and we look at examples more recent like Hakeem Olajuwon. He fasted during Ramadan and played at the highest level. He's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. And he played even better when he was fasting. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted both of them major success for standing up for their beliefs, standing up for what is right, standing up for their religion. Right? They didn't compromise at all. And you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevated them in this life and will elevate them in the next life. So we do not take our religion, our Islam, our Muslim identity as a barrier. It's not a sign of weakness. it's a sign and source of strength. And we have to be strong as Muslims. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He promises reward for the strangers. We just have to remain steadfast. He says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. The strangers, right? The Muslims, we are the strangers. So when they say, our Lord is Allah, meaning that we are Muslim, we submit to Allah, we submit as Muslims, because that's what it means. Islam, being Muslim, means you submit yourself to Allah. You believe in Allah, you submit to His commandments, you follow His commandments, and then we remain steadfast. We don't compromise, we don't hide, we don't shy away from being Muslim by living Islam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, there will be no fear concerning them, nor will they grieve. The people who are Muslim and remain steadfast, there will be no fear for them. We don't have to be afraid for them. We don't have to be afraid for ourselves. And we don't have to grieve. We don't need to be sad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on our side. And when we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't need anything else. Right? There's a famous hadith that if the entire world were to gather to harm you, no harm can befall you unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills it. And if the entire world were to gather to benefit you, you will not gain any benefit unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows it to happen. So everything happens by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to conclude, we have to remind ourselves that Islam, it does not hinder us. It does not stop us from excelling, but rather it elevates us. And with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can be elevated in this life as well as the hereafter. We have examples like Muhammad Ali and Hakim Olajuwon that they had success in this life. And Muhammad Ali rahimahullah, we saw the impact he had on both Muslims and non-Muslims. And we saw how people held him in such high regard when at that time when he was standing up for his beliefs, they saw him as a rebel. They saw him as somebody who was against society because he didn't want to take part in the Vietnam War. He knew that this was against his values as a Muslim and as a human being. And just to remind ourselves again from the hadith I mentioned in the beginning, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Tuba lil ghuraba. That the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that there is blessings and glad tidings for the strangers. So we have to embrace our Islam confidently, and the only way to do that is to learn. We learn, we gain beneficial knowledge, and when we do this, it grants us that certainty, that yaqeen, that yes, this is the truth, and I stand by the truth, and I affirm the truth. And those are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants His favor to. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, that we want to be on the path upon those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted favor to, granted blessings to. And who are they? أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ, they are those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted His favor to, مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ, from the prophets. Can any of us here be prophets? No, we can't be prophets. But we can be the rest. وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ, those who affirm the truth. Those who affirm and attest to the truth. Islam is the truth. So we have to learn the truth, be confident in the truth, and live by the truth. Those are the people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted favor upon. وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ, and the martyrs, which there's many different ways to be a martyr. And we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our brothers and sisters who are being killed around the world, especially in Palestine and in Syria and Sudan and Yemen and around the Muslim world, to accept them as martyrs, to have mercy upon them. And the righteous, the Salihin. And to be righteous, to be a Siddiq, that requires knowledge. It requires knowledge so that we can be firm in our faith, so that we don't have doubts about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our religion. But to be Salihin, to be righteous, that requires action. So once we gain that knowledge and we become Siddiqeen, we can become Salihin by acting upon what we know. وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. These are the best of people, the best companions you can have, people to surround yourself with. So then we can become like them. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us firm and make us from among the blessed strangers. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this gathering, to make this a gathering of beneficial knowledge, to make this a gathering that will increase us in our confidence and allow us to act upon what we learn, and to increase us in our iman, to increase us in our yaqeen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a gathering that is blessed and a gathering in which we may be able to gather as well in paradise with the prophets and the Siddiqeen and the martyrs and the righteous. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anything that I said is from Him, and may He accept, and any mistakes that I made, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive, for it is from my own weakness and from shaitan. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all the good that we do, and to forgive us for our sins and our shortcomings. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our youth, and to have mercy upon our parents, and to protect our children and have mercy upon them. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant victory and safety and security to all our Muslim brothers and sisters suffering around the world, and to be with them and not against them, and to help them against their oppressors, and to grant them justice, and to rectify the affairs of the Muslims around the world, and to rectify the affairs of the Muslims here in America and in other non-Muslim countries where it is difficult to practice our religion. Although we are able to freely practice our religion, we face our own challenges. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy upon us, and to grant us that confidence. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send abundant praise and the best of peace and blessings upon His beloved Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. I don't know if you all want to do Q&A. I know it's a bit late, but
For tonight, we do have snacks and drinks outside for everybody. If you'd like to go help yourself, stand if you get love. Thank you.
جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you for having me.